because you're in his hands. So come on and help me sing this song. Wondering what is going on. Why life seems to be filled with storms. Why can't I forget about my past? Why is the storm seeming to last? When your word says that, when he speaks to me, and over the ways of life, he'll speak peace. Come on, somebody, and lift up your eyes. Salvation and the glory. Lift up your voice. A majesty and for he is good and worthy to be praised. Father knows I'm gonna put it in the Master's hand. Tired of the lies they told you all your life, and you can't even seem to find your way. But know that his word says that the world peace in the world. Over the ways of life, speak peace. Come on and lift up your eyes. Lift up your eyes and see salvation and glory. Lift up your voice and sing, yeah. Majesty and honor. Worship and bless his name, for he is good and worthy. He's so worthy to be praised. What you've been going through, give it to the Master. Put it in the Master's hand. Oh, if he holds the world in the palm of his hand, all that's within it, surely he can. He can deliver me. Come on and help me say, all that's within it, surely he can. Oh, I'm gonna look to the hills from which cometh your help. All of my help, it comes from you. Look to the hills from which cometh your help. Oh, look to the hills from which cometh your help. Yeah, look to the hills from which cometh. Look to the hills from which cometh your help.
Hear my prayer, Lord.
Hey, praise the Lord, everyone. It's good to be in the pastor study today. I want to just welcome all of you in this evening. Also, my special guest that is here, Angela Love, that's going to be here. We are talking about a sound mind. And we want that everybody to be just focused in on what we'll be sharing today. It's going to be a good word that we share. I want to jump right in this so I can give my guests plenty of time to talk, and we can share and dialogue about having a sound mind. So I want to give you guys the Bible challenge for today. And listen, I appreciate all of you guys who've been jumping on that Bible challenge all week long. Keep on doing. Listen, there's no limits on how many times you can try. So just jump right on in. As many times as you can try, jump right on and try. This is our Bible challenge for today. In the New Testaments, who are compared to two olive trees in the New Testaments, who are compared to two olive trees. All right. So listen, we are talking about having that sound mind. And I want to jump right in and just kind of give you a little introduction. We talked about the sound mind on last week. And listen, we know that God talks about us being whole and healthy, spirit, soul, and body. And when we are healthy, spirit, soul, and body, he does miraculous things with us when the whole part of us is together. We can't just have one part, our spiritual part just soaring, and our mind is all messed up. He wants us to have everything in balance together. And when we are balanced together, then we become a more productive disciple. We become a more productive person. We are better fathers. We are better husbands. We are better wives. We are better friends. We are better brothers. We are better mothers. We are better all those things when we are balanced and we have our mind to be. Listen, in Romans chapter 8, I just want to talk about this because a part of that being mind, God talks to us, and Paul is sharing that, first of all, there's a difference between the natural mind and the spiritual mind. And then what he says there is for, in verse number 5, is for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit, the things of the spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritual minded is life and peace, because the carnal mind is enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. And as I begin to read and talk about Paul a little bit more, Paul is saying, listen, there's some spiritual things that you will not be able to understand. And like I was talking about in our mind, we only use about 10% of our mind to do all of the intellectual stuff that we do on a regular basis. That 90% is, to me, as I've been studying and reading and praying, God is just revealing to me that 90% is reserved for those spiritual things that he will have for us to receive. That means in the spiritual gifting and discernment and faith and prayer, believing God. Those are the things that he wanted to put into us. And when he put it in us, then we can call those things from that is invisible to bring it into that is in this world, this temporal world, this visible world, this material world. And so Paul is saying, listen, we have to keep all those things in perspective. We have to keep them all balanced together. Even in First Corinthians chapter 2, Paul began to talk about that spiritual mind and having that natural. He said, but in verse 14, but the natural man receiveth not the things of God. So listen, in your own intellect, in your own mind, there are some things that you can't receive from God when you're trying to put it within the confounds of the laws of how we operate here on earth. But what he's saying is there are some laws. What he's saying, God's laws transcend all those things. And there's a level of faith that we can obtain that doesn't act in the same way that everybody else's laws do. But listen, all of this is a part of us having a renewed mind, a transformed mind. Not only that, God says we got to have a sound mind. And when we have that sound mind, we'll be able to analyze the word of God and not apply the word of God to the same principles that everything else is, because the word of God transcends the laws of gravity. If God directs you to, I'm gonna say that one too. I've seen some people do crazy things and they say they're doing it in the name of the Lord. And I'm like, that's not having a sound mind. God wants us to have a sound mind. He wants us to be sober. But there's some things too in a part of that sound mind. The battle that we fight every day is in our mind. And when we have that breakdown in our mind, we have breakdown of mentally being able to process some things too. And on a lot of those things, the older you get, it seems like the more you have difficulty holding on to certain things that you're trying to remember. Things go out. And I always say, because our minds are now cluttered with more business, sometimes the things that are less important get pushed aside or even pushed out. And we have those things in our memory loss. But I want to bring on today our clinical therapist that will be talking with us a little bit more about the mental loss and any mental issues that we're going through. She sees people on a regular. Her name is Angela Love, and I've been speaking with her about coming in and talking about this and helping us to be able to balance out our sound mind. So if you help me welcome Sister Angela Love. I appreciate her coming on and giving her time today to share with us on those the memory loss, mental loss, those things that we have. I know as I'm getting older, Angela, they say I need to eat more berries and blueberries, walnuts, all that stuff to kind of help my mind out. So I want you to kind of share some stuff because I tend to be forgetting a lot of stuff sometimes, even
Okay.
dates and stuff like that. Anyway, you're going to share a little bit of light on these things for us. So I'm going to move out the way and let you begin to share the things that God has put on your heart.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pastor Gary, for allowing me to come on this evening to share some information with you guys. I'm going to apologize in advance because my bandwidth is kind of slow, so there may be a lag in saying and the movement in my mouth and my frame freeze. So I apologize in advance for that. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about memory loss. Like he said, I've been talking with him over the past couple of weeks about giving you some just basic information about memory loss. Memory loss isn't necessarily just something that happens as you get older. We have bouts of forgetfulness even at a young age, whether it's short or long term. There's some things may be good in life that interferes with your daily living that may cause you to have some memory loss. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things here today of what may or cause memory loss. And then we can have some dialogue after, as you stated, about this and other mental health topics. Memory loss is pretty much the most common form of mental stress that we've seen in individuals, and that can be caused from where they interfere with to remember things. Alcohol, tobacco, and drug use, of course, are a common mental trigger. Someone smokes, and that gets to your brain, that what you retain and what you're able to remember. A lot of times, if there's sleep deprivation, if you're not getting enough sleep, your brain, body can't properly. So it's hard for you to kind of go back and remember and consolidate information if you're sleep deprived. Also, depression and stress. Depression and stress makes it hard for you to pay attention and focus, which can also really concentrate on what's going on. Your brain is overstimulated, trying things or suffer from that emotional trauma from childhood into a mentioned memory loss as well. If you're not getting enough B vitamins 1 and 12, that can have a significant impact on your ability to remember things. Even proteins and fats. It's always important to make sure you have a well-balanced diet. Sometimes you're dieting, I'm not going to eat fats, I'm not going to eat meat, but you need that protein and those fats in order to be able to, excuse me, retain information. Of course, most common head trauma, any trauma to your brain, whether it be a car accident, a fall, anything like that, that can affect your memory as well, short term and long term. Sometimes your memory may gradually improve over time, but it just depends on the impact to your head. If someone has experienced a stroke, the blood supply to your brain stops due to the blockage in the blood vessels. So that can cause you to not remember things. If there's a leakage in a vessel, it's not getting the proper flow to your brain. So that also impacts it, and you're unable to remember some things. Most stroke victims can remember things that happened to them as a child, but what they ate for lunch yesterday, they have no idea. They just can't recall it. Let's see, there's also brief memory loss. You can have brief memory loss, which is called a transient global amnesia, and that can come out of the blue from nowhere. It happens instantly. Like, say, for example, you're in the grocery store. You're in one aisle and you're thinking, okay, I need to go over to aisle 3 to pick up something. By the time you get to aisle 2, you forgot what you're going to aisle 3 to get. So that's also common in any age group. Let's see. Then we have, of course, dementia. Dementia is one of the most prevalent forms of memory loss, especially in older adults. It's a progression of memory loss over time that begins to impact your ability not only to remember things that happen, but remember how to do things that you do on a daily basis. So a lot of times, people with dementia can't do anything for themselves. And we find that, there's caregivers that are out there that are working with people, their family members, friends, working in facilities with people with dementia. And it's hard because you really can't treat dementia. Alzheimer's is one of the most common forms of dementia, which there are medications for. However, it doesn't completely cure Alzheimer's, which is a disease, not just progression of memory loss. And so when you have Alzheimer's and different forms of dementia, there's a progressive loss of brain cells and irregularities in the brain over time that are never really able to regroup and pull back those memories to be able to remember your family members, remember how to go to the restroom, how to bathe, how to get yourself together, any of those things. So there are several resources out there for caregivers of people with dementia, and I can also provide information as well. But those are some of the major causes of memory loss. And not only, like we said, older adults, but younger adults as well. It just depends on, different activities that you do or different things that you've experienced over time. There are also some medical conditions, maybe an overactive thyroid, that too may impact your memory. And let's see, of course, drug use, infections such as HIV, tuberculosis, syphilis, those diseases also break down the cells in your brain and cause you to have this memory loss. So that's what I have on memory loss. If we have any questions or concerns.
Yeah, well, Andrew, I'm gonna just jump in with a couple of questions because I've been doing a little bit of
Okay.
research. Yeah, because those ones of us who I guess now at that age where we're taking care of older our parents. We're taking
Mm-hmm.
care of someone. We know that they have to be watched after very closely because they
Mm-hmm.
forget some things, some of the very simple things. As you were talking about Alzheimer's, and I was reading and looking at, and I went to the dentist one day. I'm gonna tell you the story, and then I'll tell you what made me start thinking about it. I went to the dentist,
Okay.
and as I was finishing up with my session with the dentist, which I don't like going to the dentist, they give you a toothbrush and all this stuff to be able to take care of your teeth, and I wasn't really flossing like I was supposed to, and the lady was telling me you got to floss and you have to brush, but she said when you brush, make sure you brush your gums because there's disease that will hang in your gums that affect your nerves, and those nerves will go straight to your brain, and it'll cause
Right.
your brain to actually kick into gear, and it actually will cause some memory loss when you don't deal with keep your gums and everything running right. And I never thought about that. until then, because I was like, you know what, I used to very simply say, you know what, the cavities and stuff would stay out of my teeth because I got plaque blocking it all off there. Of course, you know, they laughed at me and said, you better stop that and floss. So I've been working on flossing, brushing, and I'm brushing my teeth and my gums to try to keep that whatever bacteria and stuff there. So, and I know that I had some issues with root canals, and they touch into the nerves, and it almost like
Right.
that nerve shoots straight up to your brain. I don't know what part of your brain, but it's almost like whatever you functioning with, it almost you stop thinking, and all you want is for this thing to stop. I even came to the point where I was thinking, hey, you know what, I had a hammer in my hand and I want to just hit the side of my jaw and hopefully, and I'm like, that's part of something I know is mental. Maybe it's not memory loss, but I know I was like, okay, but they were saying those nerves they don't run to your body first and then to your head. They run straight to your brain. And they can adversely affect your memory and your mind, especially when your brain is trying to process pain. And it's constantly
Right.
processing pain. That also can make your mind work overtime, and then it doesn't rest like you're supposed to. Can you speak on some of that?
Right. Your brain is overstimulating by the thought of pain. And so your brain is concentrating on you getting rid of this pain, and it just impacts your brain cells. But not only with dental issues, but any infection in your body, the infection can get into your bloodstream and go right to your brain. So it's not only dental, if you have sores or infection, like if you cut your hand and you get an infection, if you don't get that treated properly, that infection can get in your bloodstream and go to your brain. So it's not only that it's pain, it could be something that you don't even feel, but it's infected and it can impact, your brain cells.
So all those things, I mean, if your brain is working overtime, that means it's not getting the proper rest it needs, and it ultimately will
Right.
affect those cells that you need so that you can be able to think and to be able to have memory and all of those processes that's there. So
Right.
taking care of
It's
yourself is
distracted.
vitally important for making sure your mind stay right as well. Another
Yep,
one,
your brain
I've
is
been doing a lot of
distracted. Yep.
research, and I guess Dr. Gundy is one of the guys that I've been reading a lot from him and what he's come up with. He used to be a heart surgeon, and he found out that what he was saying is because he was working on people's heart, he found out that a lot of people that were in terrible shape, but he couldn't figure out why they were in terrible shape. That some people he couldn't even operate on because of the fact that they were in such bad shape, and he found out it's in their digestive tract. They weren't getting the right nutrition. And I know I don't know if you said it or not, but some of the problems that we have could very well become. But I know I read somewhere that says 70% of a lot of our problems, even our mental issues, come when our digestive tract is backed up, and we don't have. And I know we don't like talking about this, proper bowel movements. I don't know if you want to speak on that or not,
You
but
can, right, the
talk to me a
bacteria
little bit
builds
about
up
that.
in your body. Yeah, the bacteria can build up in your body. That's why it's important for you to take probiotics and prebiotics, which are sold in any drugstore, Target, Walmart. And that kind of balances out the bacteria in your body. There's good bacteria and bad bacteria in your gut. So it's very important for you to get those probiotics. You can get them in liquid form, you can get them in pill form, and just the balance of those bacteria in your gut, if it's unbalanced, it can throw your whole body chemistry off. So yeah, that's correct. That's part of having also a balanced diet. Cut back on sugar, starchy foods that turn into sugar, and have a diet that's high in proteins and green vegetables, nutrients, good fats, not bad fats, not cooking a steak on the grill and eating that fat off of there, but fatty foods like fish with omega-3s, things like that. All of that impacts your gut, which ultimately impacts your brain.
Too, because going back to the Bible, when God gave the Israelites what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat, he also told them to eat those bitter herbs for your health. And Dr. Gundy said, bitter is better. So I'm reading all this stuff where he's getting all of these vegetables, the green leafy vegetables, but they're very
Green
bitter. He
leafy
was like, but you got to
vegetables.
cook them up right, and that bitter herb is good for you. And I'm like, well, the Bible already said that we can take those bitter herbs for our health. I don't know, we're in the same family, so a lot of the older generation used to go out to I mean, if you had a problem,
Side of the
they didn't
road.
always take you
The
to
side of the
the doctor.
road.
They used to go out there
Hmm.
and pick something I know your
Poke
grandmother
salad.
did. They used to go grab
It's
something. I
called.
was like, what is it that they grab? And they give that to you. And whatever it is, you feel better. But they would get those bitter herbs and they would do something with them.
Mhm.
And you would take that and I don't know what it was that was working, but it was free. You go out there and pick it in the yard. Um, I'm just saying, with all of the pharmaceutical stuff going on now, they giving you a fix or something that treats the symptoms, but not necessarily treat the
The
problem.
disease. Right.
And I know Dr. Gundy talked about those bitter herbs. There might be some people that are on. If you got questions online, I got a little help. That say, okay, what question do we have?
We have a question for Angela. Does Prevagen and Ginkgo biloba really help with the memory?
Okay, does Prevagen and
Collagen and
Ginkgo
ginkgo
biloba
biloba,
help with? Yeah. Does that help with your memory?
they do say that those things help with your memory, but as a supplement, you have to have it as a supplement to a healthy diet. There's no pill or herb that you can take solely for those things. You have to maintain a healthy diet and that balance of flora or bacteria in your gut. But yes, those things have been said to help.
So
And I would
listen, people,
recommend if you're going to buy
supplements.
those things to go to like a herb or herbal store, and not necessarily order them online because you really don't know what you're getting online and you really don't get an explanation. But there's a store in South Richmond or Midlothian. I think it's Friend in Hand, and she has supplements and herbal products, and she will take the time to actually sit there and explain to you what these things are for and how they can help you.
Right. As you said, I want to reiterate the fact that supplements only go along with already having something balanced that you're already doing with your diet. So you got to make sure, first of
Right.
all, what Dr. Gundy said, if you fix your gut, then all of your pretty much most of your health will line up. If you got a healthy gut, you're gonna lose weight. You're gonna your mental process is gonna be sharp. It's like, why does some people at 90 still have sharp minds, sharp memory? And you got to look at what they're doing and how they are. Is it what they're eating? But exercise is a part of that as well.
Exercise.
Um,
I was
and
going to
and
say
I talk
exercise.
about that because we don't always like to exercise. We like to sit down. We're sedentary in how we do because we sit in
Right.
front of computers, front of TVs all day. How important
Right.
is exercise to even getting our memory straight?
Exercise is very important because it keeps that blood flow constant. My dad is going to be 85 next week, and his memory is sharp. He moves around. He doesn't keep still. He's either the other day I went over and he was cutting the grass, and I said, "Don't cut the grass, Dad. Let the kids cut the grass." No, if I don't cut the grass, I just sit around and do nothing. So he just moves constantly. He's always walking, cutting grass, cutting hedges, fixing something. So you have to keep moving in order to get that proper blood flow to your brain and your other organs. So exercise is very important.
All right. I know your dad one time was up on the roof at 80
Yeah.
something. I was like, what are you doing up on the roof? But keeping that activity going, where
Hmm.
you're just not sitting around, twiddling your thumbs, but staying active is a part of that too. Another part I heard you talk about in when you were talking about your introduction is I know because I have to sleep with a CPAP. I couldn't figure out why
Hmm.
I was having little skips in my mind. But the doctor said that in 1 hour, I would wake myself up every 28. I would 28 times in 1 hour, which means I was never getting into REM sleep, which means my mind
Right.
wasn't rest. So I was actually walking around almost like a person that's intoxicated, because I really wasn't getting the rest that I need. And I know my sleep doctor said you should be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And I know some people say, well, we don't get 8 to 10 hours of sleep on a regular basis. But what we do need to do is get that 3 hours of REM sleep. So the quicker we can get our mind to REM sleep, your mind really is at rest at that point in time, and it can refresh and rejuvenate, and therefore it stays sharp. Talk to me about
Right.
sleep and how important is that with those mental processes and keeping your sound mind together.
Right. Like you said, sleep is very important. If you don't get the proper amount of sleep, it's all the same. You don't relax those nerves in your brain so that they can function properly. You know, your blood is flowing even when you sleep. So, you know, you have to make sure that you get enough rest so everything is doing what it's supposed to do. When we sleep, it's like our body is resetting for the next day. So you want to be able to give your body enough time to process what you've done during the day, rest it, and then you're rejuvenated for the next morning. So you do want to make sure that you get an adequate amount of sleep, not just in the hours, but when you are asleep, you want the quality sleep as well. You don't want to keep getting up. My son was younger, the doctor said make sure you don't give him anything to drink right before he goes to bed because he's going to keep constantly getting up during the night. So that's the same for adults too. Cut your drinking off at a certain time at night, even if you don't have issues with sleep. I think it's called apnea, sleep apnea. You're getting up during the night for something else. So make sure you cut those things off that you know may impede your sleep during the night. So it's very important, like you said, to make sure you get enough sleep because your not only does your body get fatigued, but your brain gets fatigued as well. So you want to be able to give it the opportunity to rejuvenate itself.
Okay. Listen, also a part of that sleep thing is I know I used to nights, which working nights put us on a different sleep schedule. And I
Mm-hmm.
know I read something in one of the documentaries somewhere. They said people who work nights actually lose hours in their life because they sleep at the wrong time. So or something in that sleep process of working nights actually shortens your life. I'm not sure if that is true or not because I said no, I work nights, I enjoy it, but it's only if you can keep yourself on a schedule to be able to sleep regularly. Most people that work nights during the daytime, it's hard to get a regular time for sleep. How important is that in also keeping our mind together?
You're gonna have to set a time aside the time to be able to get the proper amount of sleep. Because most of the time, people that work nights, they get off 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning. So they're doing stuff during the day. Well, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna get that done because I need to go home and go to bed. But what you should do is go home and go to bed and then get up and do the things that you need to do prior to going to work and not the other way around. So
So
you
it's a
just have
matter
to
of just
set the
getting everything
time
together.
out right. It's discipline. You're gonna have to discipline yourself to make sure that you're getting the adequate amount of sleep. Because I know people, like I said, they get off at 7, go to the grocery store, go to the barber shop, get your hair done, whatever, before they go home and give their body that rest.
I think I was one of those people that used to do all that. Listen, I want to give us enough time to talk about this one because for me, this is one of the bigger things that I think we struggle with. Especially with those mental things. You brought up the fact that having strokes will cut off some of the blood flow and different things like that. But there's also something that we've been experiencing a lot more during this pandemic. We've been experiencing a lot more grief. And I know that even when we're doing that grief, it's hard to sleep. It's hard to do a lot of things. You're not eating right. You're doing almost everything in there that will interfere with the brain and the mental processes that need to go forth. So I know you're probably not a grief expert, but talk to me a little bit about grief, because because we got 5 stages of grief. So I want to talk a little bit about how does grief affect you and your memory loss.
Well, grief is just a form of stress, emotional trauma, and it overstimulates your brain because you're processing your emotions, you're processing how you're feeling, you're processing the event. So your brain is constantly in motion, overly stimulated, dealing with your loss or dealing with illness. And so it's the same concept with the depression and stress. Grief is just another form of stress. It's emotional trauma. So you really have to take the time to figure out coping skills or talk about what's going on to someone. Because the more you hold things in, it's just going to build and build and build. So whether it's a family member, your pastor, a therapist, a clinician, a doctor, whomever, it's good to talk these things out so that stress won't build up and it's not constantly in your mind when you're at rest. So a lot of times we grieve by ourselves because we're just replaying it over and over in our mind, and that's the overstimulation that causes the memory loss.
I think that's as I'm just speaking for Black folks, because I can only testify to being Black. We don't really get any kind of help when we grieve. We just kind of, all right, we'll grieve and then we'll move on. And sometimes grieving is not that easy because you got the 5 stages to. And I'm gonna say, when I went through some tough times of grieving, if I had not gotten counseling, I probably would be mentally messed up in a corner somewhere, probably on an island somewhere. But I recognize that there are 5 stages of it that you have to go through, because you got denial, you got depression, you got bargaining, you got anger, and then finally you have acceptance. And a lot of times what I found out in talking with people, even as a pastor, at some point in time in the grief stages, they get stuck and they never process all the way through it, so that they never have that healthy balance. And then you see them doing something crazy, like going to the graveyard and just that's why they've been camping out and sleeping every night. Not saying that that's crazy, but anybody else would look at it and going, hey, you sleep at the graveyard, at the gravesite? What's going on? And you look at all those things of processing that grief, and a lot of people talk about getting closure, and you don't always get closure unless you go through that process. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit more. Again, that grief will bring a lot of stress, but walking through the processes of the grief, those 5 steps, you got to kind of get to the place where once you get to that place of acceptance, I think as Black people, we don't get the help that we need.
Because you on my video stream. I'm sorry.
Are you there? So as we get the help that
I'm
we
here.
need, okay, I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna
As
go
we
back to
get the
two.
help that we need, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna go back to 2 things that you said. You said we
Okay.
don't get the help that we need. In the Black community, we don't seek the help that we need in the Black community. There's a stigma associated with getting mental health treatment, talking to a counselor, being labeled, being judged. So a lot of times in the Black community, we don't seek the help that we need, but it's available. The second thing you said was that you don't know what you would have done or where you would have been if you hadn't talked to somebody. So once you sought out that help, was able to process your feelings and emotions, it puts you in a better mental state. So that's a lot of the issues that we're having in the Black community. People don't actually seek the help that they need because they feel like the people on the other side of either one of these calls or sitting at the end of the couch or across the desk don't look like them and can't understand their problems. But there is a global movement of Black clinicians, therapists, groups for individuals, support groups that we just have to seek out. And sometimes, if you feel like you can't find a group, start a group. You can always get some friends together. We all know somebody that's grieving. Do a chat room like this, or a Facebook group, or Instagram, and just bring everybody together and talk it out, because talking makes a huge difference. It really does. So if we can find the resources, because they're out there. You can go to your community service board. Those people that have commercial or private insurance, you can call your case manager at your health insurance company. You can get a referral from your primary care physician. You can talk to a friend that may have gone through the same thing and be like, hey, who did you see? Who did you talk to? I might need to see them as well. So once you find a resource, utilize it, because it does make a huge difference.
Okay. Now, yeah, that's what I would encourage a lot of people to do. Got a question that someone asked: what are the symptoms to help you to identify someone who's suffering with Alzheimer's disease or dementia? What are those symptoms that we may recognize and say, okay, we need to do something about it?
Okay. Very simple. Forgetfulness is like the number one thing. They may start off forgetting, to match that. If you know it's a person that always matches from head to toe, you see them one day and they have on a blue shirt with green pants and yellow shoes. Okay, something's going on here. If they forget to, where the bathroom is in the house, small things like that. If they forget that they just ate, things like that. If they forget who you are, things like that. It's a slow progression. Or maybe I have an example. My uncle, who was staying with my parents, during the day, he's fine. He's himself, everything's going great. But as night comes across, he starts talking out of his head. And saying he's seeing things or hearing things. And that's a form of dementia as well. It's called sundowners. They're completely fine during the day, but as the night comes, it's something that clicks in their brain and they just start talking out of their head. So those are little things um, that you may be able to pick up on to say, okay, there's something wrong. But the best thing that you can do is to take that person to a physician, and there are numerous tests that they can perform to determine, exactly what type of memory loss it is, what stages of memory loss they're in. So I would recommend, if you notice little triggers like that, don't just, oh, well, maybe tomorrow they'll be better. Definitely make sure you take them to get treatment, because it could be something as simple as their nutritional deficit, like we talked about before, or they've had an infection that's gone to their brain, or they may have had a mini stroke and we didn't even realize it. So the most important thing is to do is just to go seek professional help from a physician, and they can do all types of tests, even blood work, to determine, what's going on. So that's what I would recommend.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Now, as I was looking at some of these things that are triggers, because
Mhm.
I for one don't like to try to treat something with some pharmaceutical drug to say, okay, this to me they is only treating the symptom, not really getting to the source. Is there something that you can take that will absolutely reverse Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that?
There's nothing that you can take that would absolutely reverse Alzheimer's or dementia. Um, that's why I'm saying, if you feel that someone has dementia and is escalated to Alzheimer's, take them to the doctor. They can do brain scans, MRIs, CAT scans, blood and urine screens, nerve screens, things like that. And if they found that nothing's going on with their brain, it may be something that they're doing. Say, for example, you have a lot of seniors on multiple prescription medications. The medications may be interfering with each other. So it may be a negative reaction. So there have been instances where you cut back on certain medications and their memory will improve because it isn't that permanent progression of brain cells. So there are some instances where you can reverse or treat memory loss if it's not dementia or Alzheimer's.
Okay, another question here is what percentage of addictive behaviors or lifestyle originate from people that have that or are trying to manage grief?
Well, you'll be surprised. The percentage of people who experience grief, it has to be probably about 85% because you're doing whatever you can to cope with your loss or an event or a life experience. So it's actually quite high. Actually, not only with grief, with any mental health disorder, not 49% of Americans have a diagnosed mental health disorder, and it can be triggered from something as simple as grief. A lot of times people are grieving so much that it can cause them to have a mental breakdown, suffer major depressive disorder, which is a severe mental illness, and they aren't able to function. So it's quite a bit, yes.
Another name for lunatic or moonstruck.
Is there another name for lunatic or moonstruck?
You mentioned that your uncle was a sundowner. He was fine during the day, but at nighttime, is that another name for being a lunatic
Right,
or
right.
moonstruck?
So being politically correct, it would be known as sundowners. Back in the day, we would say lunatic in reference to the rising of the moon, moonstruck. So yeah, being politically correct in 2020 is known as or can be also referred to as sundowners.
Old school said lunatic.
Right, lunatic,
Oh,
moonstruck, and with the rising of the moon. Yes. Now we're switching it around. The setting of the sun.
okay, I like sundowners a little bit better because it doesn't make it sound like you're quite as crazy. And we all know somebody we just throw on the side and say, "Hey, they crazy," and they could be suffering from some kind of mental loss, and
Right,
we just we oh hey just ignore them. And I think as a
right.
society we really have to recognize those signs. And what I'm looking for is I'm like, okay, what triggers any of all of this stuff that starts to process that? Because as you said, there is no age limit on it. And I had to, as a foster parent, sometimes I watch kids who have been diagnosed with a mental disorder and they are ADHD, and they give them some medication. Now I've had to administer this medication to these kids, and they'll be like this, and then they take this medication and they just, and they say they can feel the medication. As soon as they take it, they feel it changing them, and it changes them in their thought process. So it is this medication that's there to I guess to bring them down from wherever they are. Is that healthy for them if it's changing their mentality? As you said, some of the drugs that some of the people take, they have a adverse effect on our brain to be able to say they may not work together. What can we do to be able to deal with some of the issues we have without really getting too much into too much on the drug side, where we are taking this drug to help us to deal or to cope with everyday life?
A lot of times, pharmaceuticals are used to offset what we know as health issues, mental illness, and it's not always the best course of treatment. If you go to a psychiatrist, it's their job to give you that diagnosis and prescribe you medications. They're a medical doctor. If you go to a psychologist or a therapist or a clinician in psychology or social work, their job is to try to find out what is causing this behavior or these symptoms and develop a course of action where we're seeing what helps them cope or what helps to calm them down or what helps to keep them from having this behavior. So if you're going to go to a psychiatrist, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a medication. If you go to any one of those other professions, you're going to try to find the root cause of what is going on and develop a treatment plan based on your history. That you said, for example, you were a foster parent. You have to understand what this child may have witnessed or seen before they came to you. And it could have been something very traumatizing, or it could just be their behaviors that are hereditary. A lot of kids I've seen 4, 5, 6 hyperactive. That's just their nature. They're hyperactive. And a lot of times the parent will go to the doctor, my kid is just all over the place, I don't know why. And they'll prescribe Ritalin to calm them down, but it does not only calms them down, it brings them all the way down to the point that they can barely even function. And that they're not being able to move around, exercise, get that blood flow to their brain. So it's affecting their brain as well. So it's always good to try to get to the root cause of some of these conditions because you may not even need medication. There are herbal supplements like valerian and St. John's wort that can naturally calm and rest the body without a chemical that's just taking them completely down. So it's always important, like I said, to seek professional help so that you can make sure you're getting the best course of treatment.
Okay, now speaking of those things that you were talking about, those triggers for mental disorders, um,
Hmm.
I know there's some things like you just looking at some of the stuff that they do and changes their behavior, but is there a particular thing that triggers it, per se, that makes it happen, that you recognize it? What are some of those
Every
triggers that brings on mental issues?
everybody has a different trigger. So you never know. I can't say, well, Pastor Gary, your trigger is cupcakes. When you see cupcakes, you go mad. Everybody has a different trigger, and the trigger is based off of some experience that they've had. A lot of times I've witnessed, like I've had clients that come in that have lost a spouse or something, or there's something in their home that reminds them of that spouse, and it will automatically send them into a week-long depression. So it's just various triggers, and the person themselves needs to identify, okay, so well, what just happened to make me feel like this? And those are the kind of things that you get instruction on when you see a counselor, a professional counselor. They help you identify these triggers because everyone has a different trigger. You can't really pinpoint what someone else's trigger is. So, getting to the root cause, identifying the trigger, and developing the coping skills is going to be probably your best course of action for dealing with any mental health issue. And then, like you said, we talked about the medication with the children. Sometimes there's a different effect with the medication with adults. Say, for example, people that have bipolar 1 or 2, they're taking medication, they feel awesome. Okay, I feel great. I don't need this medication anymore. So they stop taking the medicine, and they gradually spiral back into that bipolar behavior. It can go from very low depression to just manic, and they're just all over the place with these grandiose ideas and I can do this and that and invincible. So you really need to get to the root cause, identify the triggers, and set up a plan of action to deal with them.
So you were saying that the psychologist works on, and the psychologists, the clinicians, they work on trying to identify where it's coming from, as opposed to the
Yes.
psychiatrists who for everything. I'm not knocking the psychiatry where they got
We
a
not
drug that will
knocking them.
fix just
We
about
love them.
anything. But I'm like, I'm one that said, listen, there's word in scripture in the Bible that tells us this is how you do something. And I'm just thinking right now that God tells us all the time to spend time in Psalms. He tells us to pray and to meditate on his word day and night. And something about
Mhm.
meditation helps bring calm and peace and serenity and get your
Yes,
mind that place
it
where
gives your mind that
you
rest.
can really start soundness in just working on
Hmm.
that meditation. And being that we're in this society where we got all of this busy stuff and we got all the technology, we on our mobile devices now, we streaming live, we doing more of this stuff now. We don't get a chance to just decompress from all the technology and find somewhere where we can just like where I like to just go out and just see the green and just breathe in the fresh air, close my eyes and just listen to the birds twerp and just allow that 15-20 minutes to kind of refresh me in my mind. And I can tell you that I feel a little more clarity coming on when I can actually spend time daily in prayer and meditation. How important is that? And I know in the Christian society we should be on that prayer and meditation on a regular, but is that something that even on the clinician side that you guys let people know, hey, prayer and meditation is also good? Maybe y'all don't do the prayer part, but definitely on the meditation part where you take some time where you just think about look, reflect on something else other than your problems.
Right. So with you're absolutely right. With meditation, it allows your body to calm. And and as a clinician, we meet the clients where they are. So we have a client that, is into the church, into word, into prayer. We whatever they use as their coping mechanism is what we try to emphasize. If they say, well, if I go home and pray 10 minutes, I feel better. Okay, pray 20 minutes. Meditate 20 minutes. You'll be surprised at how your body can just rejuvenate with a 20-minute meditation, mindfulness. Think about things that bring you joy, that bring you calm. Sometimes I even do with my clients mindlessness. Clear your mind of everything. Some people, their minds are racing all the time. So I'm like, just clear your mind and don't think about anything. Just sit and be. And so just as little as 10 minutes a day, because a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to sit and meditate. Before you go to bed, 10, 20 minutes. Before you get out of bed in the morning, 10, 20 minutes. If you're at work, go sit in an empty office, 10 minutes. Just give your body a chance to calm, your mind a chance to relax and do what think about happy things or think about nothing at all, but give your mind the opportunity to rest.
IBM had a commercial that said ideate, where they were in a room just sitting in the dock, cutting the lights off, and the guy opened the door and said, "What are y'all doing?" They said, "We're ideating," which they were in a dark room, pillows there, and they were just letting it all go so that ideas can come into their head. Another question on some of our people's mind is dementia hereditary? Is it a gene or something that just follows us in our bloodline?
It has been said that dementia is hereditary, just because of the makeup of the body and the brain cells. And so you do tend to see dementia in generations.
Okay, that's good to know because that means somewhere along the line, I don't have to. If my parents or my grandparents suffered it, I don't have to suffer it, or I can suffer it,
You don't
or
necessarily you don't necessarily have to suffer it because you take me back to biology, Gary. You have uh, you may have like recessive genes and things like that. The gene for dementia could be recessive in you, and so you may not experience it. So it just all depends on, which genes are recessive or not. I can't think of what the main one is, but I do remember from Sunny's biology class, the recessive genes will keep something from occurring in your body. So it may be that dementia is recessive in your genes.
Yeah, dominant and recessive genes. A question
Yes,
now,
that's it,
and
dominant.
our time is going by so fast, and we still got a bunch of questions. This is the last question we're going to do for right now, and then I want you to be able to give everybody your information. Is it, can ultimate treatments such as creative therapies, art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, gardening help reduce the need for traditional medicines for those that suffering from mental illness?
It can. Like I said, it just really depends on the individual. Say for example, we're talking about the dominant and recessive genes. Somebody who is bipolar schizophrenia may not be able to have the capacity at the time to be able to do some of those things. So it really depends on the person. Like if they're taking their medication and participating in art therapy, fine. It keeps them focused. They're able to create these masterpieces. Dance, that's something that they've always loved to do. But if they're not taking that medication and they're in a manic mode, it's not going to help. So it just really depends on the individual. But those things are used by psychologists, uh, LCSWs, professional counselors in therapy, because it can work for some people.
Angela, believe it or not, it is almost 8 o'clock. Can you tell people how they can get in touch with if they need help, or if they need to reach out and to be able to say, listen, I need some help? How can they get in touch with you to find your information?
Okay, so we do have a website. It's www.mindsetva, and my phone number 804-386-2338. That's my direct line. I'm working from home, of course, so we're not in the office. And I can be reached on that. If you feel comfortable faxing up questions over, I have a fax number. It's 804-441-9508. I have an email address. It's alove@communityintervention.net. Feel free to email me any questions you may have. If you're looking for resources, I can do what I can to assist. So that's my contact
I was just
information.
saying, it's been a pleasure having you on today, just for the fact that your last name is Love. We're going to just share the
Oh, thank
love of
you.
Jesus and having a sound mind. And I appreciate you coming on. If we can get you back, we're going to try to get you back some more, because we can touch into this a little more. We want to say
Mhm.
thank you for your time, and we appreciate you just shedding that little light on something that we all are going through, because it touched every part of us. So I want to just say to everybody, thank y'all for your questions. Angela, thank you for your time and your input. We really appreciate you. We love you. Love. Anyway,
Thank
we
you.
love
I
you.
love you
And
too.
we thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting
And
me
your
on. I
bandwidth
really
held out
appreciate
pretty
it.
good. So that's all great.
It
So
did.
listen, from the Pastor Study, we're going to say good night to everybody. God bless you.
Good
Listen,
night.
in Proverbs chapter 23, it said, as a man thinketh, so is he. So look, we got to work on getting our thinking right. We got to get that sound mind working right. We got to make sure we keep our bodies in proper condition, proper nutrition, proper sleep, all those things to be able to let our mind rest, so that we won't have those mental issues, and we won't even trigger them so that they can even come up. So listen, we're going to be talking some more. We're going to finish up next week. Next week, we're going to finish up having a sound mind. And then on next Friday, the 17th, listen, if you know someone that have symptoms of dementia, they're showing signs of all this stuff, we're going to be Friday night, 7 o'clock on the 17th of September. We're going to be pouring oil, laying on hands, and we are coming against this dementia, Alzheimer's, any sort of mental illness. We're going to just ask God to restore some of those cells, bring us back to that knowledge that we can begin to keep ourselves healthy and whole. And listen, We're going to be doing that 7 o'clock. As many people that come at 7, we're going to lay hands on them and pray. Once everybody's been prayed for, we're heading on home. But listen, we're going to be fasting Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Friday we coming in, we expecting the God to do a dynamic, awesome move where he's going to bring our minds back. Whatever we have to do to recover, he's going to bring us back together where we're going to have that sound mind. The man that was a lunatic, I'm sorry, maybe he was a sundowner, I don't know, but when Jesus spoke to him and cast those demons out of him, when they found him, he was clothed and in his right mind. Before, he was in the caves, he was naked, he was picking himself, he was cutting himself. But after a while, God did the miracle and healed his man, cast out those demons in him, and then he was in his right mind. So listen, what we want to do is we want to come against this dementia, anything that's trying to bring an outside force to it. We want to come against that. We know prayer works. So we want to pray over our mind, pray over others' minds, pray over our people's minds, our parents' minds, those ones who are caregivers. Bring them in here, man. We're going to be meeting at Nail Street, 7 o'clock. We're praying for everybody that comes through those doors, and we're laying hands on them, pouring oil on them, that the anointing of God will flow and that they will be healed from any mental issues that they may be having. God bless you. Y'all have a wonderful evening, Lord. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Angela. We appreciate you. God bless you.